What is it? The title itself, leadership in AI. So I was just wanting to curiously.
AI can be useful if we are very, very clear about where we want to use it and what outcome we want out of it, and we need to work with people.
What should and how should leaders or managers prepare themselves to also simultaneously work in creating pipeline?
Influencing that person to develop him or herself. So that's the only way you can develop this so-called pipeline.
We have seen people, they're good at managing one region, but suddenly you give them multiple regions, they find it difficult. Is there anything that one, aspiring leaders, second, organization?
Having said that, the ownership has to result in what can I do better in whatever I am doing today. It is not about the next job and the next job and the next job. It is about, can I do something better? In the process, I grow either within the organization or outside. That is a different.
Today, at one side, companies are talking about coming up with various policies to retain talent. On the other side, talent availability itself is a crisis. And the third element is companies are encouraging automation, use of AI tools to see if the necessity or the dependence on human resources can be brought down.
So I worked in a company, the lifetime association with the person. Even after leaving the company, I can be a brand ambassador. So if companies think that way, derive the value you want to derive in whichever period of time the person decides to stay with you. And beyond that point, stay connected. The firm belief that this ecosystem is what is going to produce what is required for my customer. So communication is one means.
I find people tend to jump directly into defining the KPIs, KRAs and the targets because there are certain trends which they've seen in the past and they know that this is relevant for the future also, and then they'll say many a times the relevance of strategy or what is strategy is not understood very clearly. For example,
you call it plan, strategy or whatever else you want to call it. If it is not executable, it is not what it is.
I find them genuinely, they struggle in terms of looking at what should be the approach to not just incremental growth, but to take a quantum leap.
It's not about 120 to 150 crore in how many years. My purpose is this. If I may serve this purpose, I am able to find customers who will appreciate the value that I create.
Now, interestingly, one of your recent certifications has been on the subject of AI, leadership in AI. What is it? The title itself, leadership in AI. So I was just wanting to curiously.
Okay. See, since it was offered by ISB, so this is more about use cases. Which can be useful for either you were able to tweak a business model, create a new business model, understand the customer better, or bring a new product faster to the table, or solve a problem quicker, faster, etc. So my takeaway from that learning is not about the AI tools per se. After it's a 1 year course, and it was pretty rigorous. After 1 year of rigorous instruction, what I learned was AI can be useful if we are very, very clear about where we want to use it and what outcome we want out of it, and we need to work with people.
Another important element of leadership that I wanted to discuss is creating pipeline. Long back, a book on parable of pipeline spoke about how managers need to not just be bucket carriers, but they also should be pipeline creators. Now, in the current business environment where we are running around just to meet the current numbers and targets, there is so much of energy which is pulled into just delivering the current numbers. What should and how should leaders or managers prepare themselves to also simultaneously work in creating pipeline? Because pipeline is not something that you can suddenly invent and then say this is the future forward. You have to, every day you have to have some approach to be doing that.
See, two important things here is the pipeline assumes a concept that there is a certain length of the pipeline which denotes the duration of developing a person, and then there is an input end and there is an output end. So which means the pipeline is a process. So today that notion has to go. Okay, we need to imagine this more as the more primitive form of drip irrigation. If you are very familiar with agriculture, the earlier form of drip irrigation is not about the nozzles in multiple places. The very, very early form of drip irrigation, which I'm going back in 45 years back, is you put a bucket in a dry land, and then there are a lot of threads, bucket full of water, a lot of threads. Okay, you put in multiple directions. Okay, so because of the capillary force, the water drips into each it creates its own channel. So how many such projects a manager, I'm not even using the word leader. The moment we say leader, people start thinking about the VP,
maybe they relate
CEO,
to
and things like that. I'm
hierarchies at
saying
a
even
senior
if you are
level.
not a manager, if you are having one person working with you, can you make that person do more than what he or she is expected to do willingly, not by force? So that makes this person capable of developing influence. Okay, so therefore influencing that person to develop him or herself. So that's the only way you can develop this so-called pipeline. Otherwise, suddenly it's not going to happen. And the second aspect is this AI, for example, has kind of flattened another thing. Now the conventional wisdom about the span of control, you can manage any number of people now with the tools available. So it is no longer about the span of control. It is the scope of influence and scope of control. It's not even control. It is the scope of influence.
Influencing.
That's all.
Earlier we
It is
call
an
it a span
influence.
of
Not
control. Now
yeah.
it
It
is
is
a
a scope of influence.
influencing.
So how many people, even if they don't work with you directly, can you influence and get something done? In that process, they grow, and you get your results, and it is a win-win. And it is not forced, and it is not manipulated. It is not a political process. It is a human process.
We also find in organizations uh, when people, of course, this is again in some form related to learning organization, second line development, etc. In the various leadership roles or career levels, we call it as from an individual contributor to a team leader, managing function, managing managers, and managing units, business, etc. The transition is often a difficult phase for most people. Despite organizations create some formal approach to, let's say, a program for first time managers, a program for people managers. So all these are programs that we create at least to enable people to understand the requirements and transition. But still, in reality, they go through a lot of pain. So far, I've only been working towards delivering KPIs which are related to my individual contribution. But suddenly, I move on to a role where I'm required to manage people, and like you exactly said, the circle of influence, through my influence, I should get them to deliver, and I'm accountable for team performance gradually too. So we have seen people, they're good at managing one region, but suddenly you give them multiple regions, they find it difficult. Is there anything that one, the aspiring leaders, second, organization, so what sort of an approach we should take to groom them?
I think the aspiring leaders have to take ownership of their own development. So they should not wait for companies to nominate them to any program or somebody coming and coaching or mentoring them. At the end of the day, it is your life. Okay, so whether this company or another company or your own business, you are going to live your life. Okay, so that ownership has to be taken. Having said that, the ownership has to result in what can I do better in whatever I am doing today. It is not about the next job and the next job and the next job. It is about, can I do something better? In the process, I grow either within the organization or outside. That is a different thing. So the second aspect of this is, say for example, an individual contributor typically starts in a very narrow kind of a silo. So the company spends all time, money, everything in developing skills for that work. Okay. A person becomes expert, and then you decide that he is an expert, now let's promote. Okay. The promotion is not about more of the same work. Okay. It is about somebody else who is going to do the same work. So manage people. Okay. So there is a responsibility on the person. Okay. I'm intellectually very good, but I am a very abrasive person. I am very, very intolerant to mistakes. So I will have a problem dealing with others. So how do I correct myself? So do we allow that kind of an introspection, or the person, does he or she do the introspection? That is one part. And the second thing is, the moment this person becomes a manager or a team lead and fails for the first time, he or she is penalized, okay, without even giving an opportunity. So that is one aspect the companies can take care in multiple different ways.
That's a way that natural transition would happen, you're saying, and there is no easy solution.
There is no
to
easy
this.
solution.
So another aspect is with respect to talent retention, particularly in the current world of disruption where a lot of uncertainty, volatility. Today, at one side, companies are talking about coming up with various policies to retain talent. On the other side, talent availability itself is a crisis. And the third element is companies are encouraging automation, use of AI tools to see if the necessity or the dependence on human resources could be brought down. While of course it's understood, this is a kind of a difficult phase that we are going through. How do we? What should we do to manage retention of talent? It's not about just doling of money. At some places they say retention bonus, and then every year that you are paid until the next 5 years. So there's a kind of an agreement for retention bonus. So I'm not getting into value judgment of right or wrong, but what are the various things that leaders must consider?
What do you call? I mean, talent is a very nice word for calling a employee. Okay, so people don't want to call an employee, so you can call it a talent. Okay,
Yeah.
but in the heart of hearts, okay, so if the person brings a value, so the company wants to retain him or her.
Correct.
Suppose the person doesn't see value in staying in the company has to introspect. Is it the environment, is it the boss, something else? Okay. At some point in time, I am very sure that it becomes a tipping point. Beyond a point, it doesn't make sense to retain. Okay. Either way, I mean, it's like a two-way street, and I'm not talking on behalf of the organizations or on behalf of the individual. But either way, they have to part ways. But instead, so if we can look at the lifetime association with a person, forget about the employee or talent tags. So I worked in a company, okay, the lifetime association with the person. Even after leaving the company, I can be a brand ambassador. Okay. So if companies think that way, so derive the value you want to derive in whichever period of time the person decides to stay with you. And beyond that point, stay connected. And maybe multiple times the person may come back and work either formally, informally, or may refer, may do many different things. I don't think we should be looking at very, very narrow metrics like attrition and talent retention. It is like the lifetime association with the right persons.
Right persons. So it may not necessarily be the engagement scores that we typically talk about, but it is more in terms of how many ambassadors that you're creating for your organization, both while they're working and as well as after they leave your organization.
So a person has delivered a much higher value in 6 months is not bad if he or she leaves, and versus a person who has served you for 45 years and delivered nothing. Okay.
When it comes to keeping the entire workforce informed about what's happening and what's ahead of us, communication plays a very vital role, sir. I've seen leaders, who are very particular about communicating things that people must know. I've also seen leaders who are very selective, and they say not necessarily we should be communicating everything to people related to their work. Let them do things. Anything which is more uncertainty, difficult phase, let me handle it at my level. So what should be the kind of I'm not talking about channels, but in terms of the idea of communication a leader must have.
This squarely fits into the culture of the organization and how you have built the culture over a period of time. I don't want to name the company. You may know, because both of us know the company. There is a company in South India where the managing director calls all, including the workers, to the canteen, and the financials are presented. It's a listed company. Okay? And that company also decided that if I have casual workers, I can't produce quality. Okay? So no casuals. Okay, I would rather automate what is difficult to do, and my workers, my permanent workers, will do the job. And workers were also empowered to the extent that they were the highest paid in that region, and perhaps now they are the highest paid even in the country for a category of workers. Okay, so it runs into lakhs. So that culture was not built based on only communication. So communication. So what I'm trying to say is the firm belief that this ecosystem is what is going to produce what is required for my customer. So communication is one means. Okay, but what is really dysfunctional would be that the selective communication on need to know basis, and I choose to communicate to somebody and not to somebody else. And there are people who have pride in saying that I don't deal with anybody less than AVP. So those kind of things don't work in today's world.
Another element that I wanted to discuss with you, sir, is on strategy. A lot of time when we do the goal setting exercise in the beginning of the year, I find people tend to jump directly into defining the KPIs, KRAs, and the targets, because there are certain trends which they've seen in the past and they know that this is relevant for the future also, and then they'll set. Many a times, the relevance of strategy or what is strategy is not understood very clearly. For example, when I talk to my clients and when I talk to the respective department heads, I ask them questions on make versus buy strategy, outsourcing versus in-house capacity building strategy, strategy for, let's say, a modern trade versus e-commerce. This kind of detailed deliberation on strategy does not happen in too many organizations, or even if it happens, it perhaps happens in limited companies, large organizations where they're required to present. What should the smaller organization, MSME sector should do to learn this and then adopt this?
Michael Porter's view of strategy, and there is a Henry Mintzberg view of strategy. Porter has a very structured look at how strategy, what is strategy, how strategy has to be created. Mintzberg says that it is organization is a human ecosystem. Strategy evolves. You understand only after you reach a certain level. Okay. Level meaning not in the hierarchy, is level of execution. But what I understand is whatever is the definition of strategy, end of the day execution is important. Okay, so if you call it plan, strategy, or whatever else you want to call it, if it is not executable, it is not what it is. Okay, so it has to be
a great idea.
It can be a great idea or a wishful thinking, or anything you want to call it. So, but it has to be executed, and that execution has to be done in a way that you are not taking all the time in the world and all the resources you require, etc. So within the parameters specified in a business. So my view of strategy is we are here today. I want to go to point B tomorrow, and how many paths lead to that, and which path is the most optimal for my business given my current resources, current constraints, and what I can acquire or what I can do more in the process. And the second thing is about there is a vision of going beyond that. Okay, I want to conquer that, but my plan is to go from A to B to C to D. Okay, but tomorrow the path may be circuitous. I may even take a step back and then take a detour and reach there depending on what is evolving. So, I mean, I am not a specialist on strategy, so I can't define. If you ask me to define a strategy, either I have to parrot what Michael Porter said or Mintzberg said or somebody else said.
I understand. No, so the reason why I asked this question is many times this link is missed while I see a point when you say whether you call it as plan or call it as strategy, execution is critical, and maybe perfect execution is critical, and talk about a great ideas and don't do it on the ground, then it is of no use, which is perfectly understandable. But organizations who do not have that affordability to learn all this so-called concepts and jargons tend to stay with an incremental focused growth. For example, somebody who does about 100 crore, they're happy to do 120 crore, 110 crore, and they think that the current pipeline of clients and the business would help them achieve it. Now, today in India, there's a lot of dependency on MSME sectors, and the economy's reliance on MSMEs is very high. And in my role as a consultant working with various MSMEs, I find them genuinely, I mean, they struggle in terms of looking at what should be the approach to not just incremental growth, but to take a quantum leap.
MSME is a business. Okay, it's a certain size of business. MSME is a tag given to them by the government for various reasons, but it is a business. Look back at any business. Okay, so Matsushita Corporation, okay, the owners of Panasonic brand, okay, national brand, and more brands are there. Started by Konosuke Matsushita. His father was a rice farmer, okay, a very wealthy rice farmer, had a very great childhood. But at the age of 9, the father lost what all he had. The commodity exchanges started in those days. It was some 1800s or early 1900s. Okay, lost everything. It was abject poverty. At 9, Konosuke Matsushita started as an apprentice in an electrical shop. Okay, but he had a burning desire to start a business. Why? Because he had a ill health. He had a very weak lung, and he could not. He had to take long periods of rest. No employer would allow that. If I run my own business, I can take rest, and I also can do things. Very, very strange, reason to get into a business. But that's what he has written in his book. Okay, so he gets into there, but he did not define a strategy. He defined a purpose for his business. Okay, and he stayed true to the purpose. And here they are. I mean, the corporation was probably incorporated sometime around 1918, 1917. I don't know what is the exact year. Okay, and then they have seen the effects of First World War, Second World War. Japan was destroyed, and they had a lot of restrictions by the Allied occupying forces. They overcame all that. Okay, and then Matsushita is even today is a very big conglomerate.
Yeah.
Okay, so they started as a less than an MSME. Okay, the purpose drives the whole thing, and there are companies which started with transportation, bus service, backward integration into many different things. Many different companies are the evidence of that. Nothing to do with the time period. Even this time period, I mean, there is a Zoho. When it started as a startup, is equal to more or less MSME. Okay, so I mean, you might have started as a one-man show.
Yes, absolutely. So stay true to the purpose. So that is very important. So
it's not about 120 to 150 crore in how many years. My purpose is this. If I may serve this purpose, I am able to find customers who will appreciate the value that I create, and how can I mutually profitably. The customer should come back to you. My employees should be staying with me, and I am able to serve the customers. So how do you grow? Yeah, there are tools. There are various ways to do that. Yes, they may not have all the wherewithal to. They can't, get a very big consultant to come and consult them. But there is always a possibility.
In today's AI era, knowledge era, it is available. We are saying. When we think of companies which are known for their excellence, whether it is service excellence or quality excellence, we talk about Toyota, we talk about, let's say, Virgin Airlines and Southwest Airlines, Disney.
Many leaders who talk about excellence visit the company toilet. So you will find the difference between what is being talked and what is being practiced.
Right. The term excellence itself is seen as something very difficult to achieve. Maybe people have to be taken through that journey.
The employee first, and then the customer next.
Right.
Because if you don't be excellent to your employees are not going to be excellent to your customers.
The environment is becoming more of chaos. The leadership team or the business management team is pushing something which is very, very difficult to achieve. But they say that the business can only survive with this kind of contribution coming from everyone.
As a business leader, one must first stop looking at the news.
Okay.
News does not give you the real picture.
Right.
Okay? You know the real picture of your company.
Yes.
So if you are driven by news, whether it is doom or gloom, and we carry that to the workplace and start putting pressure on everybody, it doesn't really help anybody.
Yeah. Sometimes the business leaders are sandwiched between the reality and to what extent the customers are willing to support that. So
the customer is essential for the continuation of the business. The employees are essential for the continuation of the business. Vendor ecosystem is essential for the continuation of the business. You can't do any shortcuts in these areas.
More than keeping this as an idea or a strategy, get it implemented. You don't need to even say it. You can even go beyond the legal clauses and then do more for your people.
And if the person knows that their limb or life is at risk, how do you expect them to come back to work tomorrow?
Some companies work for 45 hours, some companies work for 48 hours. But at the end of the day, there are companies where who do a lot of things to at least create a feeling that we care for you and we are there to help you with the work-life balance.
How much of productivity improvement the employee themselves can bring in. So if people analyze, am I doing 8 hours worth of job in 8 hours or 16 hours?
Right.